Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Uh, I'm now beginning the first 20-minute session, which is meant to describe a passage of the Quran. The passage that I have selected for today is from verse 257 of Surah Al-Baqarah onwards. I will read, inshallah, from verse 257 to verse 260. I intend to achieve two purposes by reading this passage. One, to be able to describe briefly what the law of guidance is, as is mentioned in the Quran. And B, the purpose is to uh, help understand how the Quran is able to present its teachings in a manner which has a definite coherence attached to the entire presentation. The only thing is that that coherence has to be appreciated and to be unfolded. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Allahu waliyul lazina amanu. Allah becomes wali, protector, guardian. Al-lazina amanu, of those who believe. In Arabic, in particular, the Arabic in which the Quran expresses itself, uh, quite often verbs are used in different shades at different levels. You would normally find quite often, frequently, that the Quran is using certain verbs which are meant to convey the sense, the meaning of intending to do. So, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu. Allah, God, becomes the protecting friend of those, allazina amanu, who intend to believe, who have the right approach to believe. يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He brings them out from darkness into light. That is, the darkness of ignorance, which has been uh, engulfing them. They come out of it into the light of guidance. That is what God does to people who really intend to believe with right, sincere purpose. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. As for those who are bent upon denying the truth, who, in other words, don't want to believe, أَوْلِيَاهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ. Their supporters, their awliya, are Taghut, Satans. يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. They bring them out from light towards darkness. These Satans, they take people, humans, away from the light of truth, of guidance towards darkness of untruth, desires, arrogance. Ulaika ashabun nar. Such are the people who will be the dwellers of fire. Hum fiha khalidun. They shall abide therein forever. That is, the Almighty has decided there is a law which is universally applicable to all humans, no matter who they are. If there are people who want to believe, in other words, who want to know the truth, who are keen to learn what the right understanding is, no matter where it comes from, Allah makes sure that He holds their hands, becomes their protecting friend, supporter, ally. He takes them away from darkness of ignorance. It seems that the Almighty is mentioning a scenario wherein there is this extreme pitch darkness on the one end of a continuum, and a bright light of guidance on the other end of the continuum. And we humans are all placed at some position in that continuum. So at any point in time, we are at a position of relative light guidance and also relative misguidance, darkness. So no matter wherever we are, God makes sure that if we are keen, interested in knowing what the truth is, He will hold our hands as a guardian, as a protecting, alive friend, and take us towards the light of guidance, drawing us away from the darkness of ignorance. How does it happen? Well, it happens through the questions that we have in our intellect getting answered, our prayers getting heard, our deep anxiety, curiosity to know the truth getting satisfied through incidents, through people, through books, etc. And it's an ongoing process. It's a process which enables people to know truth more and more, to come to light in a bigger and better way evermore. Uh, what is the key? The key is the intent, the desire to believe, to know the truth. And conversely, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who are bent upon denying the truth, those who are not interested in knowing what the truth is, their friends, their protecting friends are Satan's, the evil forces, the evil jinns and humans, who become their friends, allies. They take them away from light and nur ila zulumat, towards darkness. That is the relative light of guidance that they were because of their nature, etc. They are pulled away towards darkness of ignorance. And because uh, they did it on their own volition, they decided voluntarily through their own free will, they are ultimately going to face the consequences of the decision. And such are the people who are going to be the inhabitants of fire, and they're not going to be able to come out of it. Alam tara ila allazi hajja Ibrahim fi rabbih. Have you not seen the case of Abraham? Have you not seen the case of the one who disputed with Abraham, pardon me, fi rabbih, who disputed him on the question of his Lord? An ataahu Allahul mulk. This he did because God gave him kingdom. He made him a king. He gave him control over a territory and over a population. So he got arrogant. He started imagining that all that he has gotten is because of his own knowledge, his own efforts, his own brilliance. So he disputed with Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham. Is Allah Ibrahim? Uh, it is the time when Abraham said, Rabbi allazi yuhyi wa yumeet. My Lord is the one who gives life and who causes death. That is, it seems that there was a discussion going on. Prophet Abraham was trying to convince this king that, look here, uh, my Lord, the one towards whose path I'm trying to draw your attention, is the mighty Lord. He is the one who gives life and he causes death to, to happen. Uh, and therefore you believe in it. That's what he said to this king. However, Ala ana uhi wa umid. He being arrogant, he said, that doesn't impress me. If this is what your Lord does, how is he uh, any better than me. I also uh, give life and give death. Well, this foolish remark was made on the basis of his understanding that is it not that I sometimes decide as a king that some people are going to be punished and others by being killed, and others are going to be allowed to survive even though they deserve to die. So, he said, I also give life and cause death to happen. قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق. Abraham said, okay, my God, Allah, is the one who brings sun from the east. فأتي بها من المغرب. So you bring it from the west. That is, Abraham realized that this man is a stupid fellow. He is not interested in knowing the truth. He is arrogantly rejecting the message I am putting across to him because he's not open. So instead of continuing with the same debate, he put across another point for which he had no answer. He said, my God, Allah, is the one who brings sun from the east. If you think that you are equal to him in might, bring it from the west. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. And the disbeliever was confounded. He was overwhelmed by embarrassment. He had no answer. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And God doesn't guide those who are unfair, those who are wrongdoers. That is, this particular verse is the example which is mentioned in principle in the previous verse, that وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, and those who are bent upon rejecting the truth, أَوْلِيَاءُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ, their friends, protecting friends, are Satan. And they bring them away from the light of truth, يُخْرِجُونَهُم مِّنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ, towards the darkness of untruth. So that was the first example. In other words, what I'm saying is that on the one hand, there is this important principle of guidance that is mentioned in these verses. There is also a good example, a specimen of how the Quranic message unfolds itself. So in verse 257, we saw the principle mentioned. In verse 258, we have seen one application of that principle, application in the matter where there was a man, a king, who was utterly arrogant, not interested in knowing what the truth was, bent upon denying the truth, and therefore he went towards the darkness of ignorance more and more. Now, the next two verses are actually describing two examples of individuals whom God took away from the darkness of untruth, that relative darkness of untruth, towards the darkness of truth. Why? Because they were they were the people who wanted to believe. So the Quran says, أَوْ كَالَّذِي مَرَّ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ, or the example is of the one who passed by a town, وَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَى عُرُوشِهَا, which had tumbled over its roofs. It had come upside down. قَالَ أَنَّا يُحْيِي هَذِهِ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. He asked, how will God bring it to life after its death? That is, he asked this question as to how is it possible that a township has actually crumbled to ground, and yet it would come back to life again. It would reassemble and would be put back to its old living ways. Uh, it was a question with sincere intent of knowing what the truth was. It was unlike the question raised by the king that was mentioned in the earlier verse, wherein the intention was not to know the truth. Here, even though the question seems to be apparently similar, the fact of the matter is that the man who we have been informed was a prophet from within the children of Israel, he asked this question uh, with some degree of surprise as to how it could be possible. But he was not in a denying mode. He was not. He was not rejecting the possibility of God's might taking control of everything. He just had this question uh, in the form of him being unclear. He was wondering how could it be possible. فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِيَةَ عَامٍ. So what happened was that God arranged for him to understand what the truth was. God caused him to die مِيَةَ عَامٍ for 100 years. ثُمَّ بَعَثَ. And then he raised him again to life. قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ. And he asked him, how long did you remain? That is, how long did you remain dead? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ. The man said that probably I remained dead for a day or a part of a day. When you sleep, you don't know how long have you slept. So he mentioned that probably it was a day or even less than that. قال لب- قال بل لبثت 100 عام. Uh, he said, no, you remained dead for 100 years. فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنى. Look at your food and your drink. They show no change. They've not rotted. وانظر إلى طعامك وانظر إلى حمارك. And look at your donkey. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. And we have made of you, and we look at your donkey. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. And we have made you a sign for people. وَانظُرْ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ. And look at the bones. كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا. How we bring them together. ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا لَحْمًا. And we clothe them with flesh. فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ. When he was clearly shown, it was clearly shown to him. Allah, he said, أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. I now know that God has the ability to do everything. That is, even though at the starting point of this story, there was a question asked as to how God would be able to cause those who are dead to come back to life, how this township would be brought back to life. But because the idea was not to reject the truth, but it was meant to know the truth. Therefore, God went ahead with doing things in a manner that caused the person to be able to know that God has control over everything. How did it happen? Well, we don't know the details. We're not very sure as to whether it was physical or it was spiritual. It's more likely that it was spiritual, but it was shown in a manner that there was no doubt left in the mind of the person, of the prophet, who was given to experience this spiritual, uh, the journey that he went through, the incident, the various different parts of the incidents that he experienced. He was absolutely sure that what he was witnessing was the truth. Now comes the second example, verse 260. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. And recall when Abraham said, "O my Lord, show me how you will give life to the dead." قَالَ أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ. God asked, do you not believe? You're asking this question, do you not believe? Even though the question gave an impression, apparent impression, that he probably was doubtful about the possibility of people dead coming back to life. But the intention was good. So God asked him, do you not believe? Qalu bala. He said, most certainly I do. Walakin liyatma'inna qalbi. But I'm asking this so that my heart gets more satisfied. My faith gets stronger. Well, The Almighty responded by saying, قَالَ فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِنَ الطَّيْرِ. He said, take 4 birds, فَصُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ, then cause them to incline towards you. ثُمَّ اجْعَلْ عَلَى كُلِّ جَبَلٍ مِّنْهُنَّ جُزْءًا, and then put a portion of them on every hill. ثُمَّ ادْعُهُنَّ, and call them. ثُمَّ ادْعُهُنَّ, and then call them towards you. يَأْتِينَكَ السَّعْيَ, they will come running towards you. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ, and know that God is mighty and wise. That is, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he wanted to know more clearly. He wanted to be more confident about the reality of life after death. He asked this question, and God responded to him in a manner that his faith got stronger. So that's how the Almighty operates. If there is somebody who wants to know the truth and is sincere in knowing it, the Almighty arranges for things, for incidents, events to take place in a manner that one's faith gets stronger and stronger. While on the other hand, if the intention is not there, if the person is not inclined to know the truth, then the reverse of the law takes place. The Almighty causes the person to be drawn away from the truth towards thick darkness of untruth and ignorance. That was the first part of my presentation. The second part is the one wherein I have to mention one important misunderstanding of Muslims. The misunderstanding that I am presenting today is what I will mention very shortly. But before I mention that, I want to put across this observation. If you read the Quran with an open mind, trying to understand what the Book of God is putting across as the important message for the mankind, what you observe is that one of the beliefs that is being stressed upon more than anything else is the belief in the life hereafter, the belief in life after death. The manner the Quran has presented this understanding is so logical and convincing that it doesn't leave any room for an objective reader, seeker after truth, to have any doubts. The process indeed is gradual, as we have seen in the last session, that it's a gradual process of learning and knowing the truth. But the kind of arguments, evidences that are put across, they make you feel comfortable, confident that there indeed is a life after death. However, because this understanding is now literally in our hands, because we are the ones who are the custodians of the Quran. We read it, we understand it, and we are expected to put it across to others, to the non-Muslims. Quite often, when we Muslims do it, we do it in a manner which, despite the most convincing presentation of the Quran, leaves the reader, the listener, the audience, wondering as to whether it's possible that the kind of details of the hereafter these people are putting across, could it be possible? Is it possible for a God who is all wise, all knowing, all fairness, all merciful? Is it possible that he can take such and such decision? Well, one of the things that I'm referring to as, which is one of the most significant misunderstandings of the Muslims, is that there is a large majority of Muslim population which believes that it is only Muslims who in the next life are going to be successful. All non-Muslims, no matter who they are, are doomed. For non-Muslims, if there is any success possible, it has been confined to this worldly success. For Muslims, uh, if they are suffering in this life, they should not despair. They should know that they have been given the good news of success in the next life. So, the popular understanding, or call it the popular misunderstanding, is that all Muslims are going to enter the paradise and all non Muslims are going to burn in the hellfire forever. Now, where has this understanding come from? There are different aspects of the problem. Given the limitation of time at my disposal, I'll just mention one important reason why this misunderstanding is so widespread. To be honest, I quite often wonder that when you get the opportunity of thinking with an open mind, when you become more mature, when you have the possibility of meeting people outside your own narrow domain of relatives and neighborhood, when you get to meet non-Muslims as well, uh, you do start asking yourself that is it true that it's only Muslims who will be allowed to enter the paradise? And is it a fact that God is going to throw each and every non-Muslim in the hellfire to burn therein forever? Uh, Honestly, you start questioning it. You start feeling uncomfortable about it because you meet quite often so many good people who are non-Muslims. Quite often you meet many Muslims who are a very bad example, specimen of human beings. Now, the one important reason why Muslims have this misunderstanding is that they have been they read in the Quran many verses which which give a message like the one that I'm going to quote now. I'm mentioning from verse 6 of Surah Al-Bayyinah, Surah number 98. So chapter 8, verse 6. It says, Innal lazina kafaru, those who have disbelieved. Min ahlil kitab, from among the people of the book, wal mushrikeen, and from among the polytheists. Ulaika ashabun nar. They're going to be the dwellers of hellfire. Hum fiha khalidun. Innal lazina kafaru min ahlil kitab wal mushrikeen, pardon me, ulaika hum sharrul bariyah. They are worse than beasts. They are the worst creatures. Jazaohum inda rabbihim. Their fate, their punishment with their Lord is that they are going to be thrown in the hellfire. Jazaohum inda rabbihim. That is their punishment. Ulaika hum sharrul bariyah. They're the worst kind of beasts. إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية. Pardon me, this is the right sequence of the verse, but the meanings are that those who have committed kufr from amongst the people of the book and the polytheists, they are going to be in the hellfire to live there forever. And the fact is that they are the worst creatures. So, الذين كفروا, those who have done kufr or kafir, is normally translated by many Muslims as non-Muslim. Who is a non-Muslim? A non-Muslim is a kafir. Who is a kafir? A kafir is a non-Muslim. So, the word kafir and non-Muslim are used interchangeably, synonymously. The end result is that if you read the Quran, you will find the Quran is actually condemning the kuffar to be consigned to the hellfire. It is condemning the kuffar by stating most unequivocally that they have got no hope. they're doomed. Uh, Obviously, the important question is that is it correct to assume that all non-Muslims are kafir? Well, I'm going to make a statement now in the form of a claim, and then I'll try to justify my claim. I'm making two claims. A, when you read the Quran carefully, you come to learn about the fact that all non-Muslims most certainly are not kafir. A. And B, there are Muslims who could be kafirs. In other words, what I'm claiming is that if you read the Quran carefully, you would know that the word kafir is not used to mean a Muslim or a non-Muslim or a Muslim. It has got nothing to do with which faith, religious denomination category you belong to. It has more to do with your attitude. If you reject the truth that has come to you, that is asking for your attention, you know it that it's true, it's the truth, and yet you reject it knowingly because of your arrogance or because of your indulgence in your base desires, then what you're doing is kufr. And the one who does it persistently and doesn't mend his ways is a kafir. For example, in Surah An-Naml, this is chapter 27, verses 13 and 14, the Almighty informs us that when Musa alayhi salam, Moses, and his brother Aaron, they came to Pharaoh and his companions, conveying the Almighty's message, supported by the evidences, signs in the form of miracles, impressive miracles. The Quran tells us, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا. They rejected them. وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ. Even though their hearts were convinced about them. They knew that they were true. ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. They rejected them unfairly and arrogantly. That's what the crime is. That you come to learn about the truth. It has been presented to you so impressively, convincingly, that you're left with no choice but to acknowledge and accept it. And yet you are not acknowledging and accepting the truth for one petty reason or another. Well, that's what causes the person to belong to the category of allazina kafar. There is another verse in chapter 6, Surah Al-An'am, verse 20, which says about the people of the book, some people of the book who were scholars. The Almighty says, the Quran accuses them, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ. They recognize him, that is the Prophet, may God have mercy on him, or the Quran, the way they recognize their own sons. That is, their understanding of the reality, the fact that the Prophet Muhammad, God's mercy be on him, is God's messenger, whose arrival was prophesied in the earlier books by the Almighty, is the same Prophet. Their understanding is so clear, so unmistakable, that they recognize him quite as clearly as they recognize their own sons, and yet they reject him. The Quran tells us in Surah Al-Maidah, the 5th chapter, verse 44, that those people who reject the possibility of implementing God's instructions, his injunctions, such are the people who are kafir. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. And those who refuse to implement what God has revealed, those who refuse to run their affairs uh, in the manner the Almighty has revealed His Sharia, His law, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Such are the people who are kafir. That is, if the people who are not interested in implementing God's law, uh, they just spurn it, they just reject it. That's what causes a person to become a kafir. Why? Because he knows what the truth is, and yet he's not interested. He says, I believe that it's God's word, it's God's command. But when it comes to the question of implementing, he's not interested. For example, um, quite often it so happens that when a person dies, there's quite a few valuables that are left behind. There is property, there is wealth, and it has to be distributed in accordance with the Almighty's law of inheritance. So there are certain people who would say, well, we're not interested. We'll do it the way we want to. Then obviously this is denying the truth. I'm not saying that if we Muslims are not practicing Muslims, we are, as a consequence, in the danger of belonging to the category of kafir. No, a person can be a weak Muslim, and sometimes he or she may not be properly following Islam in its totality, but there is this feeling of embarrassment. There is this realization that we'll improve, we'll correct ourselves, we are learning, we've got questions. And those questions are genuine questions. God will arrange for such people to know more and more guidance, to be able to know the truth more and more. They are not the ones who have been described as kafir in the Quran, but the people who know what the truth is. They have no reason why that truth should not be implemented. They are doing it simply because of their own vested interests. There is no embarrassment, remorse in their hearts, and they're doing what they want to do, despite knowing full well that the Almighty wants them to behave, to function differently. So, what I'm trying to say is that the Quran is absolutely objective and fair. It does not it does not describe all non-Muslims as kafir, nor it describes all Muslims as true believers. It describes what the truth is. There are people from amongst the non-Muslims who don't want to understand and follow the truth. There are likewise, similarly, people amongst the category of Muslims who have the same kind of behavior. So the Quran, I'm just going to leave you with two more verses. There is this verse 62 of Surah Al-Baqarah and 69 of Surah Al-Ma'idah, which are talking about just the same thing almost. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئُونَ والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Indeed, those who are believers, that is Muslims, and those who were Jews or the Nazarenes or Sabians, whoever amongst them believes in God and the life hereafter and does good deeds, for him is going to be a reward with their Lord. They will have no fear of the future nor any sorrows of the past. What it actually means is that if you truly believe in God and you truly believe in the life hereafter and do good deeds, you are going to enter the paradise, no matter which religious group you belong to. Does it mean that if somebody rejects the last prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is he still going to be eligible to enter the paradise? Well, the answer is no. But the question is whether a person has rejected the prophet or not is what God is going to decide. And it's going to be decided on the basis of the fact as to whether the person who is being scrutinized, whose uh, performance is being looked at, whether he actually came to learn about the message of the prophet properly or not. Now, what does properly mean? Is God is going to decide. He is the best judge. He's got all information at his disposal. We don't know whether a person who's a non-Muslim remained a non-Muslim because of the poor performance of Muslims, poor presentation, poor personality, poor character, poor morals. God is absolutely fair. His judgment is going to be based on all important factors, all factors relevant to the case at hand. The last thing that I will just mention is that there are verses in the Quran that have praised some non-Muslims, people of the book, lavishly. They were mentioned as the people of the book, and yet they were praised. Had they been Muslims, had they converted, obviously, uh, them getting categorized as people of the book won't have made sense. I'm just referring to verses 113 to 115 of Surah Al Imran, the third chapter, wherein the Almighty is talking about certain people of the book, about whom He says that they are very pious, God fearing. They are reliable people. They have stood firm on the undertaking they made to their Lord. They have always remained steadfast on the right track that they were given. No matter what good they do, it is not going to be allowed to go waste. So, what I'm saying is that the Quran does not say that all Muslims are going to enter the paradise, nor does it say that all non-Muslims are necessarily going to enter the hellfire to live there forever. Each individual is going to be treated on the merit of his performance given her circumstances. God is going to decide about the fate of each individual, and God is absolutely fair and just. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.
Thank you, Dr. Khaled. Thank you for the talk today. If you have any questions, please click on the raise hand little column next to your name, and I'll take you turn by turn. Rafia Khaja Saiba, I have unmuted your mic. You can unmute it and ask your question directly if you like.
My question, Dr. Khalid, is about the Christians who believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Now, what happens to them? Because obviously this is totally against our beliefs. So could you answer this, please?
You see, when the Almighty is going to decide about the fate of an individual or a group of people, He is going to take into account a number of factors. Two of them we know are important. A, what exactly is it that the person did or believed in? B, why the person can I have this noise is distracting? And B, uh, why did a person did a certain thing which was apparently wrong? And why did a person believe in a certain faith which we know was wrong? We will make no compromises when it comes to the question of polytheism, ascribing partners with God, believing that God had has a son. We will continue to say that this understanding is certainly not acceptable. But whether the person who has that belief is going to be punished would depend upon how much he knew, how much he had the possibility of knowing. So it all depends on that question. I hope I'm clear.
Rafia Khaja Saiba, I'm sorry, I apologize. I had to mute your mic because of some disturbance, but you can open your mic, and if that doesn't complete your question, please go ahead and follow up before I move on to the next person.
No, that does answer that. I think it wasn't very clear because there was a lot of noise, but understood the gist of Dr. Khalid was saying. My second question is that who was the first prophet that Allah put to sleep of 100 years? And what was the sequence of the coming of the prophet? If he could answer this, please.
There are few names that are mentioned. The Quran doesn't clarify as to who the prophet was. Uh, it is said that you know one of the prophets who possibly was the one whose incident is mentioned is the one who about whom the Quran says that the Jews, some of the Jews, considered him to be the son of God. That is Uzair. But there are others who have a different name from the biblical prophets. So Uzair is one of them, but there are other names also which are suggested to show that it could have been somebody else.
And the sequence of the prophets, Hazrat Adam salam, after that was followed by Hazrat Nuh salam. I'm a little confused.
If you're talking about the famous prophets, I can tell you, but if you're talking about the entire list, I can't tell you because the limitation of my knowledge. Adam alayhi salam was, as mentioned in the Quran, was followed by Nuh alayhi salam. Then we have the two great names, Hud and Saleh alayhi salam, who have been mentioned in the Quran. And thereafter we have Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam, Ishaq alayhi salam, and then Yusuf alayhi salam. And then we have Musa alayhi salam, Harun alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and the last prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. In the middle, obviously, there are quite a few other names mentioned in the Quran that I've missed, but these are the more prominent names that you find in the Quran, and the sequence is the one that I've mentioned about them.
Does that complete your question, Rafiq Hajasaga?
Yes, thank you, it does.
Thank you. We'll move on to Yassine Fahad. Please unmute your mic and go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. I have two questions. The first one is, do we need to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim before every surah that we recite in the Salah? That's what I want to know. Because apparently Bismillah is part of the surah, so I just wonder sometimes if we should do it before we start the next surah after Al-Hamd. And my second question is, I've heard from Ghamdi Sahib a few times that Christians who believe Jesus to be the Son of God, they still believe in Tawheed, so they are not mushriks basically. Just because their main belief is still Tawheed. I don't understand that because it's very clear when you talk to the Christians that they clearly believe that Jesus is Son of God. So isn't that a form of shirk? Like, I don't understand his point of view, so if you can explain that.
I just answered the two questions in the reverse order. You see, the Quran, I quoted a verse from Surah Al-Bayyinah, verse 6 of Surah number 98. It mentions, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ وَالْمُشْرِكِينَ. Indeed, those who disbelieved from amongst the people of the book and the polytheists, mushrikeen. In other words, the Quran itself is mentioning that al-mushrikeen were a separate group of religious people, and the people of the book were distinct, were different from them. Now, this distinction has been maintained by the Quran itself. Why? The reason is that whereas al-mushrikun were concerned, they were the ones who themselves claimed that they were doing shirk, polytheism, and they claimed that doing shirk is the right way. That's the message, that's the religion of God that was revealed to Abraham. That is why the Almighty continues to say that it's a false allegation. It's something which is not true. As far as the people of the book were concerned, Uh, they indeed did shirk. The Quran is absolutely clear in describing their shirk, more particularly the shirk of the Christians, of Nasara. The Quran unequivocally condemns the understanding that Jesus is the Son of God. It condemns the understanding of Trinity. However, it still refuses to call Jews and the Christians polytheists al-mushrikun. That doesn't really mean that their crime of shirk is any less. It's just a matter of not using a certain term for a certain group of people. Let's face it, there are Muslims also who have polytheistic views. They go to graves and tombs of saints and they pray to them instead of God. And they have views which are not very different from the views of the polytheists. But we have been restrained from calling them as mushrikun, al-mushrik. We will say that what they're doing is shirk. Well, depending upon uh, who the person is, what the occasion is, we'll be careful. Obviously, we'll try to do it wisely and politely, and obviously sometimes also strongly to make the point clear. But this distinction between the two groups is what the Quran itself has maintained. What exactly is going to be their fate in the next life? Well, God is going to be the judge. As I said in response to the earlier question, uh, what is wrong, and obviously that cannot be justified. And that is going to be one aspect of the process of investigation. But the other aspect is going to be as to how much this person knew that the wrong that he or she was committing was actually wrong, and what were the person's circumstances. Uh, Somebody who erroneously thought or was led to believe that what he was doing was right, even though what he did was wrong. Uh, well, God obviously is going to look at the circumstances. Um, and as I said, there is no reason why shirk and the mention of polytheism should ever be compromised with. And I don't remember as to when and where Ramdi Saab used um, accommodating remarks for polytheism and polytheists. He never does it. But then he distinguishes between the two groups and when it comes to the question of using the expression mushrik. As for your first question, yes, we are expected to read Tasmiyah Bismillah Rahman Rahim at the beginning of each surah. The only question is as to whether it should be done loudly or we should do it in a manner that only we can hear it, as against the other recitation, which in the 3 of the 5 prayers we do it aloud. So reading Bismillah Rahman Rahim at the beginning of each surah, except Surah At-Tawbah, is what should be done. Of course, I mean, if somebody misses it because of no deliberate intention, then it's a different matter. But normally, we should read Bismillah Rahman Rahim before each surah.
Okay, just to further on your answer, so you're saying if somebody is erroneously led to believe something that they believed in erroneously and they didn't know what the truth was. So let's say if a kid is born in a Christian family and he's raised by his parents as Christians, that's what he has been led to believe, that's the true religion. But then he doesn't make an effort to find out on his own. He just keeps believing all his life what he was told. So my question is, doesn't every individual has a responsibility to try to find out what the truth is? Like, would it be sufficient just because we were told by our parents to follow a certain religion and we kept doing it all our lives?
You see, it's true everywhere, in each case, in all different categories of people. It is also equally applicable in the case of Muslims. it is not the Almighty's way of judging people that He puts some people in a position of advantage by arranging them to be born to families which already had the right guidance, and they made no effort whatsoever to understand it properly, to question it, to know it more deeply. And simply because of the accident of birth, they are going to be given the privilege of succeeding in the next life with flying colors, while the others who were given to be born in a position of disadvantage because their environment was telling them about views that were wrong, misleading, simply because they had this disadvantage and they couldn't come out of it. They're going to be held responsible and accused for doing what they were doing. Uh, God is going to look at the struggle that a person put in. He's going to look at the sincerity of the individual. He would look at the value that he added positively to the faith, to the understanding that was given to him by her environment. In other words, all humans have been put to a test wherein they are asked to know and appreciate the truth more and more and to practice it as best as is possible for them. We Muslims, we have been given to go through a test wherein we were given the Almighty's message preserved in its pure form, and it still is a trial. If we don't take it quite as seriously as it deserves, we may also find ourselves facing some very difficult questions. And others who were in a position of disadvantage, if they made as best efforts as could be possible for them, despite the fact that they apparently were not quite as in the right category of religious understanding as others were, they might actually get a better grade uh, in the system of the Almighty. I am no judge. I cannot make a statement regarding anyone. I can only be confident about the cases about which the Almighty Himself has already clarified. You know, the prophets, His companions, and those who opposed Him. As far as the rest of the others, well, we will put across our religious understanding with its arguments to all people who are willing to listen to us. But when it comes to the question of the fate of those individuals who were different uh, from us as far as their belief system and their religious acts were concerned, well, we will say that we disagree. In some cases, we'll say clearly that we believe that this understanding is wrong. But as far as the fate of the individual is concerned, well, we've got no business to decide about it because it's only God who can decide about them, and it's only He who will decide about them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. We have 2 minutes. I think we will conclude it, but before that, I would like to make a quick announcement. Dr. Shehzad will be back starting next class, and Dr. Khalid Saab, thank you very much for making time. I mean, we really, really appreciate you filling in. We didn't have to cancel or suspend any classes because of you. Thank you, and inshallah. Thank you very much. So we'll conclude, and inshallah we'll meet next Saturday. Assalamu alaikum.